Good evening and welcome to Jazz Tales 2020, a look back at our first year. My name is Fred Hughes and I'm the founder and president of Jazz Alive, a 501c3 charitable foundation based in Talbot County on Maryland's Eastern Shore. Our mission is the preservation and continuation of jazz, America's indigenous art form. For those of you who are joining us for the first time this evening, welcome. Great to have you with us. And let me tell you a little bit about the show. Jazz Tales is a live stream concert series set in an intimate setting that spotlights the unique musical and personal tales of our guest artists. I'm very fortunate to perform with and interview our artists who in 2020 included bassist Paul Carr, Michael Bowie, Herman Burney, and Tommy Cecil, saxophonist Lee Pilzer, Paul Carr, Bruce Swaim, and Ron Deal, trombonist Jim McFalls and Greg Boyer, trumpeter Tim Stanley, guitarist E. Sean Kisani, and vocalists Sarah Jones, Allison Crockett, and Darden Purcell. We're going to begin this evening as we began on July 15th with the incomparable bassist Paul Langosh. Paul has played with pretty much everybody in the business, including over 20 years with Tony Bennett. Here he is performing Freddie Hubbard's standard, Up Jump Spring. Welcome, everybody. I hope you enjoy the show. Up next, we have the one and only saxophonist Paul Carr, who joined Jazz Tales on September 16th. Paul has 8 recordings to his credit, is the founder of the Jazz Academy of Washington, and reestablished the ever-popular East Coast Jazz Festival as the Mid-Atlantic Jazz Festival in 2010, where he serves as the executive and artistic director for the festival. Here he is playing Joe Henderson's Record-A-May. Yeah, Paul. Recordame. Jazz Tales has 3 interview sections, and the very first interview section, I always ask the same question to each of our guests that appear on Jazz Tales. And that question is, what is that one thing or several things that had you say, I got to be a musician, and more importantly, I have to be a jazz musician? Here's what they all responded. Here's how they all responded.
One was just being around my house because my father was a piano player.
From a very early age, I backed the Drifters, the Coasters, the Shirelles at the Warner Theater.
And so that was the first thing, just hearing them sing. And of course, as you also mentioned earlier, grew up in the church, grew up listening to the radio and all of that kind of stuff.
I couldn't imagine doing anything else, first of all, and I think that's really kind of what it has to be.
My mom said you have to take 5 years of piano, and if you want to quit after, you can. But by then you've reached the age of enjoyment, so then kids want to keep going, which is why it's like if you can hang on till you can do what some of the bigger kids do, you can really find real enjoyment.
Started with alto, and then through a story maybe we'll get to later, ended up being handed a baritone. And here, you're going to play this on a concert or on a little job, and I played those first notes on the baritone. It was like, oh, no, this is what's happening.
This is it, man. Everybody gets along, everybody's having fun, playing great music, and I want to do this. And, next thing you know, 46 years later, I'm still doing it.
My father, before he was a physician, was an arranger, composer, and pianist. So I grew up every night listening to jazz.
I'm probably one of the early adapters. My mom used to play music in the house all the time, so she loved jazz. So I grew up listening to the records. She had the records on.
I got it from all directions.
Sure.
And it was just a sponge, man. I just soaked it all up. And next thing you know, I was like, okay, how can I do that? That's what started me playing.
Wow.
Well, I just recall getting more and more drawn to music in general, probably in I guess back in the day we called it junior high school. This instrument was a way for me to connect with my family on geometry and math.
It was just too much fun, And also, by that time, end of high school, that was clearly the thing that I did best of the things that I did.
I'm hearing the music. That's all that's going in my head. So she told my dad, she says, I think Brian has a gift here. Let's get him going in music,
I was a good student, and I kind of fell into music school in college.
When I decided to ask that question, I knew I was going to get a bunch of different answers, but I never envisioned that it would be that unique for everyone. I mean, it was just wonderful. I hope you were intrigued by that as much as I am. I love asking that question, and I love the response. It's always different than I thought it was going to be. Next, we have a wonderful guitarist who is originally from Kabul, Afghanistan, and grew up in the Dover, Delaware area. He's a great composer, arranger, and just a wonderful soul. I was so happy to have him as a guest. On October 14th, he joined us. I'm sorry, no, October 21st, he was a guest on Jazz Tales. And I asked him about mentors, and I was interested to get this answer because normally one would think of mentors being, a teacher that you're, in the flesh with, but he was talking about mentors being all of this great technology that we have.
At the time I heard Wes Montgomery, he had passed away many years before, but I still consider that a mentor. Because when you learn about somebody's life, it's not just about were they a great musician? Wes Montgomery had a day job almost his whole life to support his family. It's about character, about morals. But side note, I think we have to learn how to separate in a way those from enjoying somebody's musicianship. Because if we pay too much attention to somebody's personal life per se, a Chet Baker or an Art Pepper or something like that, they made beautiful music, and I think it's possible to enjoy the music without separating it, without getting too tied up into were they a good person.
Great advice, Sean. Thank you. That was a wonderful answer. Here he is playing just a great rendition of Burt Bacharach's "Always Something There to Remind Me." that a cool rendition? Yeah, I'm so glad he brought that in. For those of you that have just joined us, thanks for joining us as we look back on all of the 15 episodes of Jazz Tales that we had in 2020. For those of you on Facebook, if you come over to YouTube, there are folks that are regular watchers of Jazz Tales, and they might be able to answer any questions you may have regarding the show. And if I see something and I have a moment we've got a lot of music and interviews to get through, but if I see something, I'll chime in as well. But we have some frequent flyers there in the chat room. Welcome, Ed, Steve, Dave, and Janet. Thank you so much for signing in and saying hello. I think it's time for a ballad. And I think this next ballad is just one of the wonderful, beautiful ballads that we had, of all of the music that we've had during the 15 episodes. And this comes from my good friend of many, many years, trombonist Jim McFalls. Jim joined us on September 2nd for Jazz Tales. And Jim, after retiring from the lead trombone and solo spot in the Army's premier touring jazz ensemble, the Jazz Ambassadors, he's gone on to play with Capital Bones, Chuck Brown, the Baltimore Symphony, record with Dave Liebman, Jeff Keyser, Dennis de Blasio. He's just all over the place. And he's also on the faculty at Towson University. Here he is playing a beautiful Johnny Griffin ballad called When We Were One. Here's Jim McFalls. What a beautiful tune. Johnny Griffin's When We Were One. Thanks for bringing that in, Jim. I really enjoyed playing that. It's the first time for me with that tune. You know, I enjoy being able to ask questions and hopefully get some things from our artists that normally wouldn't happen in a performance setting as far as questions and responses. And occasionally we've gotten some really good ones about being on the road. And I've got two that I'd like to play for you. This first one comes from bassist Paul Langosh and his time on a jazz cruise with Mel Torme, and in particular hanging out and playing the jam sessions later, and some interplay between Mel Torme and the great bassist, or as we're about to find out, instrumentalist Don Thompson.
So Mel started coming and sitting in, and then Mel would be like, you know, he'd be playing drums, and then he'd like be doing scat singing and, you know, trading fours with Zoot Sims, with Mel scatting and Zoot playing saxophone. So there was all this stuff, and, you know, and then Don just sort of kept surprising everybody by picking up another instrument. And so Don got up one morning, and there was a envelope that had been slipped under his cabin door, and it was on Norway stationery. And he opened it up, and he unfolded it, and it was a picture of a knife in somebody's hand with blood coming off the end of it. And it said, "Sing and you're a dead man."
What a great story. You know, I've heard it several times and it cracks me up every time I hear it. This next story, vocalist Sarah Jones was talking about lyrics, and we were talking about music and so on and so forth. And in particular, she was talking about this song that she sang while she was in the Soldiers Chorus of the U.S. Army Field Band, and there was a lot of lyrics in it. So this is an interesting tale from the road.
I kind of had the mic out like this, and I kind of like wrote it here, and like my jacket, you know, the jacket comes down like this, and I did that, and I was like, I did great, I got through it. So it was the first night. This little tiny kid at the end of the show, you know, we always go out to the audience and meet with veterans and families of veterans and just supporters of the armed services, and this little tiny kid came up to me and he said, "Lady, did you write your words on your own?" And I was, you know, out of the mouths of babes, right? So I tried to be like very adult about it, and I'd be like, yeah. But no, I said, I did. Right there. I admit it.
That's a funny story. Next, we're going to feature Sarah now. Sarah's just a wonderful vocalist, and she's also the vocal jazz instructor at Towson University. She was our guest on August 19th for Jazz Tales. Here she is singing a great Rodgers and Hart tune, "Have You Met Miss Jones?"
Have you met Miss Jones? Someone said as we shook hands, she was just Miss Jones to me. Then I said, "Miss Jones, you're a girl who understands I'm a man who must be free." And all at once I lost my breath, and all at once was scared to death, and all at once I owned the earth and sky. Now I've met Miss Jones, and we'll go on meeting till we die, Miss Jones and I. was just Miss Jones to me. Then I said, Miss Jones, you're a girl who understands. I'm a man who must be free. And all at once I lost my breath, and all at once was scared to death. And all at once I owe the earth and sky. Now I've met Miss Jones, and we'll go on meeting till we die. Miss Jones and I, until we die. Miss Jones and I.
On July 22nd, we had bassist Michael Bowie as our guest on Jazz Tales. And Michael had a very, very early career of traveling with some great musicians, including Betty Carter. And I was asking him about that, how he got the job and what it was like to be on the road at such a young age with the great Betty Carter. And here he talks about drummer Winard Harper stopping by and getting the ball rolling on how he got with Betty Carter. Here's Michael Bowie.
They played Blues Alley, and after they finished Blues Alley, they were heading up to Philly. And Winard stopped by UDC, and I was in the practice room. He said, "Hey, man, you want to audition for Betty Carter?" And I took a train to Philly that night and met her. And a couple days later, driving in my old Ford Falcon, going up to New York, and it was a practice room, very not unlike this one, you know, on Felix Street and by BAM up in Brooklyn, and she, Benny Green, pianist, and Winard, myself, we'd be in the practice room every single day, getting that music right, and she taught me about consistency. And she said, nobody else is going to give you a chance like this. You know, you got to learn to be consistent. You know, and she beat us up when we're needed, but it was well worth it. I mean, yeah, that's a beautiful way to kind of get your feet wet in New York. You know.
Indeed. Here's Michael and I playing Oscar Pettiford's Blues in the Closet. On August, saxophonist Lee Pilzer joined us, and Lee brought in a tune of hers, an original that she wrote for her mom called Blue Moo. Here's Lee Pilzer. Blue Moo by Lee Pilzer. Such a great tune. You know, she's such a wonderful writer, composer. She writes for the Diva Orchestra, of which she's a member of that orchestra. But we got to talking about improvisation, and she had some wonderful advice for our young people.
young people are scared they're going to do it wrong, that they're not going to sound good. And the answer is, yeah, you probably won't, or you might not. But do it anyway. Do it anyway. If you're in your school jazz ensemble once they reconvene, and your band director hands out a chart, if there's a written solo, no. Maybe start with that one. But improvise. Improvise as often as you can, as early as you can. Because I didn't come to improvisation early. I was a jazz comp and arranging major at Berkeley, and I was a beginning saxophonist. It wasn't until I left Berkeley that I was leaving that I started thinking, wow, I really like playing. And I felt like I've been playing catch-up ever since. So start, and don't be afraid. Just do it, because you know what? The stakes only get higher. As you move from middle school to high school to college to gigs, the stakes get higher. You should still go for the solos, but just do it. And again, that dovetails with the don't be afraid. Don't look down. Just do it.
Great advice for our young people, Lee. Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you. Speaking of young people, we're very fortunate to have over 70 students that were able to view Jazz Tales for 2020 thanks to very generous donations from some of our listeners. Some are signed in here, and they've sponsored the young people, and it's been great, especially when the young people get on the chat board and tell us, ask some questions and all that kind of stuff. But we really appreciate it. If you're interested in sponsoring a student or sponsoring a show, go to our website, jazz-alive.org, and you can find out more. Click on the sponsorship tab, and you can find out more about how to sponsor students. And speaking of sponsoring, we were very fortunate to receive a grant from the Talbot County Arts Council to offer the Easton High School Jazz Band here in Easton, Maryland, the opportunity to see the entire 2020 catalog for Jazz Tales. And I talked to their band director, Mr. E.J. Osterly, about that. What has been the feedback from your students?
Oh, having that as a resource has been fantastic, particularly the instrumentalists, the wind players, because that's mainly what I deal with. The stories of Greg Boyer playing with Maceo Parker and P-Funk. I mean, even some of my young students know who these guys are and really enjoy these stories. And watching these virtuosic performers, the saxophone players, the trumpet players, it provides us a good way to stay engaged during virtual teaching in these weird lockdown times, right? It can give us something to do in between smart music assignments or in between running our scales or things like that. Just the exposure. The students, by and large, love it. I don't really have any guitar players in band, but some of my students play guitar. And when you had the guitarist on there, I would make sure that those students knew about it. And no, I've had a very positive response.
Thanks again to the Talbot County for making that happen, offering the 2020 catalog to the students at Easton High School Jazz Ensemble. And thanks to Mr. Osterly for joining me and talking about it. Next, we have the great bassist Herman Burney, who joined us on July 29th. And he took a step back into the history of the jazz bass and a certain way of playing it on this Jimmy McHugh tune that is called On the Sunny Side of the Street. And when I asked some of our subscribers what they would like to see in this retrospective, here was one that they requested to see this again. So here's Herman Burney and On the Sunny Side of the Street. Wow, thanks Herman for taking us back in time. That was just get to see many bass players playing like that. That's just wonderful. Thank you. You know, Herman spent over 10 years with the late great Freddie Cole, and I asked him about that experience.
I got a chance to play with a lot of other people, you know, by playing with him. Other people too, but you know, other vocalists would come always to hear Freddie Cole because they're looking for songs. Great piano players. I mean, like, I got to meet some of the world's greatest piano players only because they came to hear Freddie Cole.
Right.
It wasn't because of me.
Right.
You know, like Tommy Flanagan, Hank Jones, Kenny Barron, Cedar Walton, you know, guys like that. I mean, they're coming looking for songs.
Right.
And so it was really a humbling and educational exposure and experience playing with him.
Most certainly, one of the world's greatest. I loved seeing Freddie Cole as often as I could. Speaking of requests, we had a request to hear this tune again. This was from our December 9th Jazz Tales episode with vocalist Darden Purcell, and she sang Bruno Martino's Estade.
Estate, you bathe me in the glow of your caresses. You turn my eager nose to tender yeses. You kiss away my sorrow with a sigh. Oh, how the golden sunlight bends the willow. Your blossoms send their perfume to my pillow. Ah, who could know you half as well as I always feel you near me. And every song the morning breeze composes in the tender wonder of the roses. Each time the setting sun falls on the sea, Estate. And when you sleep beneath a snowy cover, I'll take you in my heart just like a lover, and wait until you come again to me. blues composes in the tender wonder of the roses. Each time the setting sun falls on the sea, and when you sleep beneath a snowy cover, I'll take you in my heart just like a lover, and wait until you come again to me.
Beautiful, Darden. That's such a beautiful tune. And now Dr. Purcell is the Director of Jazz Studies at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. And she's had a wonderful career, including spending some time as a vocalist in the U.S. Air Force Band in Washington, D.C. I asked her about that time, and in particular, the times that the band was deployed overseas. Is there any time while doing that that sticks out? I think for any of us that have worn a uniform and performed, there's always at least that one moment that you just go, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, I just think you have to see it to believe it. You know, it's like we see everything on television, especially this time of year when it's like sending care packages to our troops and all the USO. In fact, Sean and I just donated to the USO this Christmas season, and you know, but when you see it, when you see kind of how people are living over there in the tent cities and the very, very short showers and just being away from their families, it just makes you feel so fortunate, you know, not only for everything that we have here, but what they are sacrificing so that way we can do what we do back at home. And I think that's why I loved it so much, because I just thought, I kind of felt like purpose when you were over there, like I'm doing something good.
Right.
Hopefully.
Such a wonderful tune written by trumpeter Tim Stanley. Tim visited us on October 28th. That's a tune he calls Great River Road. He's a member of the Navy's premier jazz ensemble, the Commodores, and along with being a great trumpeter, a great composer, a great arranger, he also sings very well. And one of the great things about this show is that, like the improvisational style of what happens in jazz, we also have people on the chat board that get involved with the whole thing, and it's like they're part of the tune. And like tonight, we've got people both on Facebook and YouTube. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for signing in and your comments, folks. But after Tim sang a tune, we had a listener, a viewer, who actually asked this question of Tim. What a great voice. What kind of connections do you see between singing and playing trumpet, a la Chet Baker, Louis Armstrong, Nate Berkey, and other singer-trumpeters? Tim's response was this.
My cue from Chet there. I interpret, when I sing, I didn't start doing that till I was already playing trumpet for a while. And so it was just really natural for me to interpret melodies the way that I would play them. And I just think that makes it way more musical and more fulfilling for me, you know.
Yeah, most certainly.
And I had one teacher say, singing and playing are the same thing, about 4 inches difference.
That was trombonist Greg Boyer, who joined us on October 7th. Greg's played with so many great artists, including a long stint as the trombonist for Parliament Funkadelic, and in fact, he's still with the Chuck Brown Band here in the Washington, D.C. area, and traveling with Maceo Parker and Prince. And as a matter of fact, when we finished that tune, he had this to say about Prince.
Prince, you know, in his frequent forays into jazz was just like going to books of Cannonball Adderley and Wayne Shorter. And he wanted to do footprints. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just kind of charted out some funny little harmonies for Candy and Maceo. And I put foot, Prince, and he just happened to walk by and look at that. And then he looked at me like, you're nuts.
That was bassist Tommy Cecil, who was with us on August 5th for Jazz Tales. And Tommy has just two, not just one, but two wonderful CDs of the music of Stephen Sondheim. And I've always wondered how that came about, because they're just great CDs. So I asked him that question, and here's what he had to say.
He played this arrangement of his, of Send in the Clowns, and the effect that it had was exactly what you want to happen when you perform. It just brought the audience, it drew the audience in, and it was remarkable. And of course, no wonder it's Bill Mays playing. You know,
Right.
he's
he's
a
an amazing
phenomenal
player.
talent.
Yeah. Those records are worth checking out. Bill Mays and Tommy Cecil, two of them with the music of Stephen Sondheim. I was very fortunate on November 11th to have one of my mentors from my early days in the Washington, D.C. area when I was with the 1st Army Band at Fort Meade, Maryland. During that time, I played in the UMBC Jazz Ensemble, for which Ron Deal was the director of that band. At the time, Ron was the lead alto player with the Navy Commodores, and he's played with Nancy Wilson, Mel Torme, Tony Bennett, Rosemary Clooney. I mean, he's just a wonderful musician and a wonderful educator, and he meant a lot to me in my early days. So it was great to have him here on Jazz Tales and talk about his illustrious career. And here we are playing Clifford Brown's Joy Spring. Here's Ron Deal.
Thank
Ron Deal. So great playing with him again. On September 9th, we had vocalist Allison Crockett join us for Jazz Tales, and she's had a really interesting career in various genres in music, and I asked her about that. So did they know you were a jazz singer? That's kind of where you started?
That's how they picked me up.
Oh, wow. Wow.
You know, acid jazz was the mixture. It really came out of northern Britain, where they would be dancing, literally dancing in clubs to Art Blakey records, and DJs would scratch them.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and you know, so it was this mixture of stuff. And so I was the local jazz singer, and that's where King Britt found me in the jazz club, and so, but people in the soul world think of me as a jazz singer. In the R&B world, people in the jazz world think of me as an R&B and a soul singer.
Yeah.
So or a dance singer, because I sang so many different things, and I got into doing drum and bass and hip hop. I mean, I did a plethora of stuff.
Having fun playing music.
Out of the night, soft as the dawn, into the light, child, innocent child, soft as a fawn. This child is born one small heart, one pair of eyes, one work of art. Here in my arms, here he lies, gentle and warm, blessed this morn. Now, out of the night, soft as the dawn, into the light, this child, innocent child, soft as a fawn. This child is born one small heart, one pair of eyes, one blessed this one small heart, one pair of eyes, one work of art. Here in my arms, here he lies, gentle and warm. Blessed this morn, a child is born.
Wow. Just a beautiful rendition. Allison, thank you so much for doing that tune. It's one of my favorite ballads, and I just love the way she sang that. Great to be a part of it. We've got one more showcase for you this evening. This comes from the great Bruce Swaim, who's a wonderful saxophone player who had the opportunity to be a part of Danny Gatton's band. And he considers Danny to be one of his mentors. And I asked him about his time with Danny, and here's what he had to say. If you haven't heard him announce it, you know it's Danny. I mean, what a unique sound and ideas and all of that. Just now.
Well, it comes to musical charisma. I think all of the great players that we admire, the thing that sets them apart is, I guess I just call it musical charisma. I mean, a million guys have the technique, but it's the ones that really have something to say with it is what sets them apart.
Musical charisma. I told him when he said that night, I'm stealing that one. I think that is just such a great analogy. Musical charisma. Thank you, Bruce, for that one. So for our final musical selection for this evening, here is Victor Young's Stella by Starlight with Bruce Swaim. Thanks so much for joining us this evening, folks. I really appreciate you spending a time looking back at all 15 episodes of Jazz Tales for 2020. I hope that you'll sign up for our mailing list. Join us next week for our show with saxophonist and clarinetist Bill Mulligan. Sign up for our mailing list. You'll always know what's going on. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful evening. And before we roll the credits, I always ask our artists, do they have parting words for our students that are watching? And I picked two tonight that I thought were really apropos, from Ron Deal and Jim McFalls. But I also want to just say to all of the folks who sponsored a show, sponsored a student, or just gave us a donation during 2020, thank you so much for contributing to our mission of getting this music out there to our young people and helping our young people with this music and to play this music. Thank you so much for everything you've done. The credits show everyone that's been with us in 2020. I wish I could thank you personally, but we'd go on for a lot longer. Thanks for joining me this evening, and I hope to see you next week for Bill Mulligan. Have a great evening.
I mentioned earlier that I had the distinct pleasure and honor to study with Phil Woods, who was, my mentor, really. But if anyone is really interested in trying to better themselves and really wants to get really great on their instrument, find somebody to study with, someone that is really, really up there, and you'll be amazed at how much you're going to learn from a real professional that, and don't be afraid to just walk up and say, hey,
that's right.
I'd love to study with you. I love the way you play.
Persevere, man. That's the best advice I could give you. Persevere. Stick with it. If music is something you dig and you have support from your family, like we were fortunate enough to have support from our family, man, it is, having a life in music is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I would not have changed a single second